Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical Vids. I've got two new knives to show you from Condor Tool & Knife. We have the K-TACT Kukri and then also the Necker. Now, if you're not familiar with the K-TACT Kukri, I do want to tell you that it was designed by Condor Tool & Knife in collaboration with Alan from Alone. So Joe Flowers designed the original Kukri. Alan from Alone, who won season 1, took that Kukri out there. He liked it. He came back after winning and said, hey Joe, let's make a couple tweaks. So they came up with the K-TACT Kukri. And yeah, I mean, when I talked to him at Blade Show, and I'll put a link to that video with him at the end of this video, he basically said, I made a couple tweaks, but overall it was a great design. It worked great. So why change it? I think he said, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's the history of the K-TACT Kukri. And yeah, cool knife. So I've always liked to think about systems when I'm out in the woods, not, you know, what's the coolest knife, what's the best survival knife, what's the biggest axe. I'm thinking about how do my tools and items work together to, you know, make it the best experience I can have out in the woods. And so that's why I talked to Joe Flowers about getting these two knives here. So, you know, you've got a bigger knife that you can use for chopping and more aggressive work. And then this Necker, which is certainly compact. You can use it for smaller work, detail work, if you want to, you know, clean up a fish after you catch it to prepare it for dinner. So I think between these two, we've got a nice system or setup, and we're going to put these guys through the paces and see what we think about them. What I want to do now is talk through my experience in using the knives, and we'll roll in some footage so you can see what they look like actually in use out in the field. And then we'll talk toward the end about the sheaths and the details of the knife as far as steel and blade length and those types of things. One of the first things I'll tell you is that my Kukri didn't come very sharp. Now, I don't necessarily hold Condor responsible for that because I got this right off the floor from Blade Show 2017, so it might have been a version that they had that was, you know, not overly sharpened, so a lot of people could handle it, whatever. Joe Flowers gave it to me right at the end of Blade Show. That said, I think the best way to sharpen it is with one of these. So this is just your standard sharpener like you would use for kitchen knives. And this one I have, you can see it says step 1, 20 degrees, step 2, 15 degrees. What I did was like this, 20 degrees, put it up against the flat steel, just drop it down and then run it along. So like this. Switch to the other side, did the same thing, and then I honed it in at 15 degrees, and that put a really nice sharp edge on it. So just a heads up as far as sharpening it, that's the way I did it, and it worked quite well. Let's talk about actually using the Kukri. Chopping. I will tell you that once I got a good edge on it, it chopped well. Before I had the edge on it, it was kind of like brute force. So there are some knives, bigger choppers, machetes and things, I find that even if the edge isn't really sharp, it'll still kind of do the job. This one, once you get a good edge on it, it chops well, but before that, it wasn't doing it. So I would encourage you to have a small sharpening rod that you can bring out into the field, put it in your system with the Kukri. That being said, like I mentioned, once it was sharp, it did chop quite well, quite effectively. I chopped through birch, I chopped through some pine, I chopped through some maple, so I used a wide variety of woods, and it did the job for all those things. Down in this section right here, you know, when you got the handle you're holding on, that's where you're going to be doing more of that detail work, and it did feather sticks, it did some of that fine carving pretty well. By the nature of the size of it, you're not going to probably do a ton of carving, you know, with this little portion of the blade here just above the handle, but if you want to get some feather sticks and you want to do some, you know, maybe some sharpening of some sticks to make a frog gig, a fish spear, something like that, it's gonna do the job. One thing I want to mention about the handle to you is that at first I thought, well, I'll throw a lanyard on this, and I thought, no, let me try it without and see how it feels. This is probably one of the bigger handles I've ever held for a knife this size. Alan K's, I don't know, he looks like he's probably 6'7", you know, give or take. So he's a big dude, he's probably got big hands. So he designed it, you know, or it was designed for probably someone with big hands like that. If you have medium moving to small hands, I think this may just be too big for you. If you've got medium moving toward large hands, I think you should be okay. But I generally run large size gloves and maybe a little bit bigger, and this handle was definitely large. So just want to let you know about that. If you did run a lanyard on this and then run it around your wrist, I think you're going to have even better control than I did. Chopping with this, with no lanyard, was no problem for me with the large handle and large size hands. So just to give you a little perspective on the size of the handle. The handle is comfortable. I got no hot spots. I had no issues whatsoever. They did put this base on there for crushing, breaking rocks, things like that. I honestly don't I never use a pommel for things like that. Maybe driving a couple tent stakes every once in a while, but I usually just pick up a rock. So it's certainly big enough that you could do that. That's not a use I find for the pommel of pretty much any knife that I have. Now I do want to mention your thickness here. It is 0.31 inches or 8 millimeters. That's thick, so it's bigger than, a lot of people are like 1/4 inch is what you think for a larger, knife like this, a BK2 or something. So it's even bigger than that. So just keep that in mind when you're using the knife, that it is definitely a big, thick, hefty knife. You will see, I'll roll in some footage here, you will see that using the tip of the knife, not the blade, but toward the tip, I was able to strike a fire steel. It was some work, and you'll see what I basically did was I wedged this into a piece of wood, locked it in, and then pulled the fire steel up against it. It's for me, as a knife is, it's too unwieldy to try to hold it and then just to operate around the tip with a fire steel. You got to be careful because you're right at the tip, you're right by the point, you're near the blade. So just be aware of that as you're using it. Don't be moving too quickly, moving too fast, and actually cut yourself. I think locking it in and pulling the fire steel away is going to be the best way that you actually do that. I enjoyed using the Condor Neo Necker as well. It's a Nessmuck style blade. I have not used those a ton. I do find that they do a good job. This thing is excellent for detail work. You'll see me making feather sticks. You can see that the spine is sharp enough that you can throw a spark off the fire steel, which is great. I will tell you that it's made to be basically a 3-finger grip. The way that I held it, my hand always tended to be the 3-finger grip, and then my thumb would fall like this on top. That was just kind of the most comfortable way. When I tried different grips, just didn't work out as well. I carved some notches with this as well, and that it was able to do that quite well. Feather sticks, fine detail work, like I said, food prep, if you're, you got a fish or something like that, this thing will do a bang-up job. Bigger tasks than some of those things I mentioned, I just don't see this knife doing it. I don't think it's like a weak knife, it's a full-tang blade, but it just is too small to comfortably do that. So, yeah, it was fun to use. Again, it's a 3-finger grip, especially for a person with large-sized hands. You can kind of, if you look right here, I've kind of wrapped my whole hand around, but my pinky is just off the end. But again, default position for me was 3 fingers and then my thumb on top, and I was doing those type of push cuts. So yeah, again, tiny little compact knife, lightweight, easy to use, and it definitely did the job. Let's talk through your sheaths real quick. This is obviously the sheath for the Kukri. This is green. It's got kind of a green with a gray tinge in the handle. You can also get this in tan. It is a dangler system. You do have snaps there. And yeah, so it's, as far as wearing it and how it rides, it's good. You do have some cordage on the end there, so you can take that off, use it for whatever purposes. In particular, I think for a lanyard is a good option. The one thing I'm going to let you know about is the snap here, and I found that this thing just popped open a little too easily. So I'm not pushing real hard. I'm not like, really throwing my weight into it or anything. Just watch with one finger here, just like. So what I would recommend you do is, because of the way it's sealed on this side and then opened on this side, I would recommend that you run a piece of paracord or something like that. So that was the one main issue for me. I just wanted to snap in more firmly, and it doesn't do that, honestly. The snap, the click, you can hear it. It sounds like it's really good, but again, with one finger, without a lot of effort, it's popping open. So that would be one change I'd make to the sheath, and just want to warn you about that. It is locked in there pretty securely with the K-TACT, so I don't think if this becomes loose, this is going to come flying out if you're just sitting around camp or walking around camp. But if you're hiking through the woods for a while, this thing could start to move on you. Again, it's not going to come flying out, I don't think, from my experience. But yeah, that would just be a change in the future that I would make for this sheath system. When it comes to the Neo Necker, you can actually see right here, I tried to remold the K-TACT because it wasn't clicking in. I wanted to click. It did. I haven't had it slip out or fall out. It has stayed in place, but it doesn't click in the way I'd want it to for K-TACTs. Now I know guys who run neck knives with a leather sheath, and it's just the friction that keeps it in place. So again, I don't see this as a huge issue, but if you're going to get the Neo Necker or the K-TACT, I would just be aware of, the retention is good, but it's not excellent, and I would like to see this actually click in so you can hear it here or not hear it. There's no click to it, so just be aware of that. Again, I've been wearing this around my neck prior to, and I've been wearing it today for the whole day, and it hasn't slipped out, hasn't fallen out. But I just want you guys to be aware of those two things. Just a heads up for the Neo Necker and also the Kukri. Quick rundown of the specs for your Kukri: 14.5 inches from end to end, 10 inches for your blade, 1075 high carbon steel. You do have micarta handles, again 0.31 inches thick, which is 8 millimeters. And I will tell you that I was impressed with how easy this was to sharpen. Despite all your angles and bends and curves and stuff, with that sharpening rod it was quite easy to do. Your weight for the Kukri is about 2 pounds. Details on your Neo Nessmuck: 6.5 inches from end to end, 2.65 inches for your blade. It's $10.95, which is a steel that you don't see a ton of from Condor. So be aware of that. Again, micarta handles, and then you get the Kydex sheath as well. 3 millimeters for your thickness, and your weight is about 2.5 ounces. So I started off talking about systems, and I thought about these two as kind of a combined system. Having used them, would they be a system for me? Actually, they wouldn't. I would like to see this, and then maybe a bush lure, and then this as well. If I was going to do a system with this, the Neo Necker is really good for that detail work, but I want something a little bit bigger, but not as big as this. So I would do, this as my large chopper. It's not a massive chopper, but it can definitely chop well. But my big knife option, and then something like a bush lure, and then this as a neck knife. I think, because this one is so lightweight, boom, put it on your neck, you hardly even notice it there, and you have it to carry around to do some of that really fine detail work. But as a system, these two, I just found this one a little bit too small, and to do more of that carving, I found this one too big. Individually, I will tell you that I really like both these knives. I'm a big fan of Kukris. I just think they got a lot of function, they look cool, and I will say, if you're not familiar with this, I talked about this in my Tops Kukri video that I did, but the ergonomics of this are such that because of the bend in the blade, when you're chopping, your wrist looks like this when you come into contact with a piece of wood. With a knife, your wrist has to be like this because this is a straight line. So just the ergonomics of it for chopping and some of that more aggressive work, whether it's chopping through some big pieces of wood or just slicing through something to get some brush out of the way, the ergonomics of a Kukri allow for it to be much more comfortable and less tiring for your hand. So I think that's a major win. Bottom line for me with these two knives is that I like using both of them. I like them individually. I'd want something bigger in between these two knives if I was really building a system, but both of them function well. If you like the look of these and you're looking for a tiny little knife, the Neo Necker, I gotta be honest with you, I really like the Mayflower that that Condor has, but Joe's like, here, take the Neo Necker and check it out, and I've liked this one quite a bit. And then again, like I said, I'm fans of Kukris. Alan seems to be a very cool dude, and it clearly did a good job for him on the Alone television show, and having used it a bit now, I can see why he liked it. There you go, two knives from Condor Tool Knife, the K-TACT Kukri and the Neo Necker. Thanks as always for checking out the videos. We have a couple more queued up for you right here. Alan's comments on his knife from Blade Show, and then also the Tops Kukri. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids here on YouTube. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Instagram and Tumblr as well. More videos coming soon. Take care. Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical. Spit. So I started off